forward to the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. And now the Quran says, well, but we know, we weren't there, but we know, because the Quran says, well, he didn't really die, and this spear, well, that was just kind of a prick to see if he was still alive, and so forth. It doesn't add up. And they died for telling this story. They were witnesses to the miracles that Christ did. They were witnesses to the resurrection. They were given the opportunity to deny their faith. They weren't thrown into the lions, into the stadium or whatever, but they had the opportunity to not one of them said, wait a minute, don't kill me, I'll tell you the truth. We made the whole thing up, and we stole these bodies, and we hid it in Peter's basement. Just like the soldier said, well, Shabir says, they were paid to do that. Well, but the disciples weren't paid to do it. You couldn't buy the disciples off. They knew for sure that Jesus Christ is God. He raised the dead. He could walk on water. He could feed 5,000 with a few loaves and fishes and so forth. And the disciples were absolutely certain of this. Otherwise, why would they testify to this? What were they getting out of this? All they're getting is persecution. That's all Jesus promised them. Jesus said, if you are true to me, you will be hated and persecuted just like they did to me. And this was why they were martyred for their faith. So to say that, well, no, we're not really sure, because the Quran says, Surah 4, 157, well, they killed him not, but it appeared to be so, and Allah apparently deceived. He's not supposed to be a deceiver. I guess Allah deceived people into thinking that Jesus had been crucified. So the foundation of the Christianity is a deception from Allah. And these poor disciples believed that, and that was the foundation of the Christian faith that spread throughout all the world. I don't think so. I don't think that they would die for a lie. And the Bible is very clear. This is the foundation of the Christian faith. This is what the gospel is all about. And now we're asked to throw that out, because Surah 4, 157, 40 words in that one place in the Quran, rather indistinct as to exactly what it means. That's what we're going to accept now, 600 years after the event, without any witnesses. I don't think so.
Thank you. And 5 minutes for Shabir Ally to conclude.
In these 5 minutes, I want to just retrace our steps and find out what we can conclude from what was discussed here tonight. Both Dave and I have tried in our own ways to explain the reasons for our faith and to defend what we believe in. But finally, it is by the totality of what I have said and what Dave had said that we should all be informed with today. And our conclusion should be based on all of these. In my own way, I tried to explain why I would choose the Quran, if I had to, over and above the Bible. I would prefer, on the other hand, to have both books, benefit from both. But I've tried to show that even though many people think that the Quran is a violent book, and by contrast the Bible must be a peaceful one, especially since it is represented by a faith today, which is characterized by Jesus, who is known to be the Prince of Peace. I've shown on the contrary that when one looks carefully at the issues that are common to both the Bible and the Quran, one can see that the Quran is in fact a peaceful book, and I regret to say that the Bible has passages which are quite violent. For example, God's promise to Abraham, which meant that the people in that land would have to be destroyed and displaced, in the words of Dave himself. We saw a Moses story where Moses commands his followers to kill off all of the people except for the young girls who have not yet known a man, because these virgins are to be saved for the male soldiers. Joshua, at the wall of Jericho, the walls came tumbling down, but then the people got massacred as well. Joshua and his army killed off everything that breathed in that town. And then David, he was reprimanded for his adultery with Bathsheba, but he wasn't reprimanded for killing 200 Philistines, taking off their foreskins and using that as the bridal price to get married. Samson, killing 3,000 who were on the roof, and we don't know how many more were inside, in a suicide mission, actually may be a kind of inspiration for Muslim suicide bombers, if they would bother to read the Bible. I hope they don't read a story like that and get inspiration from it, because obviously we all have the better sense than to do something so violent and then say that it is by God that we're doing it. We have seen the story of Elisha and how he prayed or cursed the children, and as a result 2 she-bears came out and mauled 42 children. Apparently God is in league with these prophets doing these violent things even to children. Elijah slaughtering 450 priests, prophets of Baal in one shot. We have looked at the fact that the New Testament even praises these figures like Samson and David and Jephthah and the others. These were supposed to be great men. We have looked at the passages dealing with women, and we have seen that in the Quranic story of Eve, even Eve isn't blamed for the sin of Adam, but in the Bible she is. And as a result of that, we have all of these pontifications from the writers who will tell us Eve was the one who brought the sin into the world. It wasn't Adam who was deceived, it was Eve. That, of course, has implications for how women will be viewed. Not only Eve, but Delilah. And again, we find that the stories of women are so painted that women come out in a bad light. That could not be the truth. There are some good women and bad women, good men and bad men. And we should hear both sides, but we always hear about the bad women starting with Eve. Somebody wrote a book, actually, All the Bad Girls of the Bible. And we've seen that there are passages, in fact, which are quite demeaning to women, like the fact that a man could sell his daughter as a slave, that a priest's daughter should be killed, burnt to death if she commits adultery, that a woman would be brought to her father's house to be penalized, to be stoned to death for adultery. And this, of course, resembles what we're worried about in our present times by way of honor killings. In short, I think from my presentation, I am still satisfied and convinced that if I'm to choose between the two books, it would have to be the Quran. But I don't want to choose between the two of them. I use both books. Muslim commentators on the Quran have used the Bible to fill out the stories that are briefly told in the Quran, because those stories are told more extensively in the Bible. So Muslims can benefit from both. What about the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus? I believe that if one were to look at the New Testament writings very carefully, it would be hard to be convinced that Jesus actually died on the cross and that he rose again from the dead. There are other explanations which are more likely, and the Quran speaks about God rescuing Jesus and raising him to himself, and ultimately requiring that Muslims should believe in Jesus, and if we do not, we cannot be true followers even of the Quran. So the Quran calls us back to faith in Jesus. Thank you.